as conscious beings, as the class of awakening humans on this earth, one of the qualities of that awakening is compassion. And so even towards, I find, just speaking in testimony, even towards evil people, evil beings on the earth, I'm finding myself feeling compassion for them, in knowing where evil comes from, in knowing where destructive behavior comes from. And again, this comes from my own story of, when I was capable, any moment I was capable of acting destructively outwardly towards others, it was due to destructive tendencies towards myself, or just latent negative energies inside, or traumas, or resentments, or anything like that, that was stuck inside of me, that I suffered from inside. And then therefore the expressions outwardly are in accordance with those energies inside. So you may find in you this happening as well, and it's can be a little confusing at first, because for the mind anyway, it's difficult for the mind to rationalize something like that. But if you look at your own healing, if it's happened, or if you've experienced this, if not, this is kind of the way that it worked for me, was as I healed my relationship with myself and learned to step into a greater perception of love and acceptance for everything that was going on inside of me, my actions outward started to change too. The outward experience and the inner experience are directly related, and they are inseparable. You can't hide forever anyway. You might be able to mask it to some degree, but you can't hide it. It's anything that's inside will manifest in some way outwardly, even if it's in subtle ways. So if we acknowledge that about our own self, and we can confirm that in our own self, in our experiencing. And if you haven't experienced this yet, either you're really blessed and don't have too many obvious destructive qualities that you're expressing outwardly, or you're not aware of them yet. So wherever that ends up being, you can confirm this in your life. If there's behaviors that you express outwardly that you can notice that aren't of or for the greatest good for everybody, including yourself and others, even if it's towards birds, or whatever, it might show up in subtle ways. If there's any of that stuff there, or another example I'll throw out there too is your relationships, your interactions, and not only what you express outwardly, but what's expressed towards you. That's another layer to this, is what happens towards you in your life is also evidence of your internal environment. So nothing like randomly happens to you. You attract certain things into your life based on what you have inside. So that's another way we can look at this too. And if you notice any of these things happening that are undesirable, or cause suffering, or cause struggle or stress, or invite, depression or anger or anything like that, we can look at what inside of us is calling that into our lives, or calling us to act in certain ways. And then as we go in, if we can find the origin of it, We could say, okay, that came from my childhood when I was repeatedly scolded for being and doing something, whatever it is. And that stuck in there somewhere. And then we can set that free, just kind of spend some time with it, accept it, send love to all those involved, and release it. And you'll know you've released something when you really feel like a euphoria. And also you may actually even forget what the thing was to begin with. This has happened to me a couple of times where I've spent some time to release something that I was working through, and it was so dissolved that I literally couldn't even bring it back. I couldn't remember what it was at all. It was totally gone. So that's a possibility for that to happen too. But as we do that, and then we can see how our actions outward change. And I'm saying all of this so that we can learn how to efficiently pray for others. So in other words, if there's wicked, if there's evil in the world, and we are aware of that and we want it to stop, we want things to stop. We don't want it to continue. One, we have to really work on, at the same time as having that desire. It's not a bad thing to have, but at the same time to know that there's a divine play happening with everything that happens on the earth, and there's a destiny to things. There's an alignment in a way, even though it might be difficult to perceive. This is a huge hang-up because we have, we're human and we have empathy. And this is a huge hang-up on the path to accept that there's a greater wisdom and will to earth that's beyond, pleasure and pain. There's movements of life that happen that seem horrible, but have some kind of divine alignment to them for whatever reason. And this is a really deep conversation that we'll have to have at another time, but accepting that is really important in this as well. So we're not attaching and not causing suffering for ourselves while we're praying for the world. We don't want to do that. We don't want to go backwards. So when we desire or have this, even maybe not, it's not even a desire, maybe it's just an inspiration to pray for the planet, to pray for the wellness of those involved, to pray for evil to, be dissolved from the world or something like that. If that's an inspiration, if that's something you're inspired to do, we can look at what works. We can look at what works instead of saying, I wish evil people stopped being so bad. That's okay. You can do that, but if you look at your own journey, we can pray from the beginning, because to get somebody to that position, somebody who's locked into evil ways and doesn't see their ways as being evil, or doesn't have awareness, or doesn't care, or is so lodged in the mind activity that there's no compassion in their life or in their awareness, that the veil is so thick for them that there's no regard. If that's the case, what we can pray for is, because if we know that ignorance and suffering are linked, then we can pray for revelation, and we can pray for healing inside themselves. We can pray that they heal the wounds that are existing inside of them. Pray that they find relief from their suffering. We can really drive our prayers into that way, and because from there we know that we can really trust our own behavior when we're healed inside. We can trust that we're going to act in a greater way, or a way that's more aligned with compassion, when we are healed inside ourselves, when we have compassion for ourselves, and that stuff exists inside. So we can pray for an internal wellness for them. We can pray for their well-being and hope that they find happiness. If they're happy, truly, like divinely happy, and have awareness of the truth about life and existence and reality. And if we can pray for, the unity consciousness within them to arise, we can pray for their enlightenment. The qualities of unity consciousness and enlightenment are kindness and compassion. And so, the behavior that they're acting on, or that's being acted out in the world, is like a symptom of their own suffering. So we don't pray for the symptom to go away, right? We pray for the illness to go away. This is like, this touches into like Western perspective on medicine also, as where we take medications to soften the symptoms that we experience, and they don't really do much to actually heal us. They just numb the experience that ailment is taking us on, which is often necessary for us to have revelation about what's going on in our life. And that's a whole thing. It's related, but it's a whole thing in itself. So that's just something that has been coming clear for me in my life more and more as of lately. And if we want to make changes in the world, we do work inside ourselves, because we're part of the world and that radiates out. But if we really feel a call, our consciousness is shared. We can feel each other. We can feel each other, like, very much so. And especially the more we tap into the subtle energies and the subtle realms of existence, the more we can tap into that consciousness of that connects us and unites us. And so when we pray, it really does like radiate out, and it really does have an effect on the world. And not that it even matters. Our prayers are often for ourselves too. If we heal our relationships with our perspective of evil, just as an example, we actually heal a part of ourselves that brings us even closer to unity consciousness, because unconditional love includes everybody, and we can't have unconditional love for one person if we don't have it for everybody. It doesn't work. It won't happen. So this is a way for us to not only really, really like come to a thorough practice inside ourselves and a thorough like perspective of divine perception, but we also actually have a grander effect on the world and an efficiency to it too, because you could pray for world peace, and it's great, but to know that everybody's got their own karma to work out, and everything that everybody experiences is a part of that karma being worked out. It's for their greatest good. It may be terrible, it may be horrible suffering, but it's part of what's necessary for them to break down ignorance. It's part of what's necessary for them to break down the walls and the veils that are up, that keep them from perceiving reality in a true, ultimately true way, beyond like the individual truths of the person. The karmas that we work through are to bring us to an ultimate perception of universality. And yeah, it's okay to pray. There's nothing wrong with praying for people that have peace and happiness in their lives. That's great. But that they see the events of their lives as the medicine that it is for them to wake up is a more like direct prayer, I think, and one that, because we can't invade anyone else's karma. We can't. It won't work, and I feel like this will pierce through. If we send this signal out of true awareness, then maybe a little spark will open up in others, as opposed to if we say, I want evil to not exist in the world, that creates, that's just an unreality at this point in time. Not that it's not something to strive for, it's okay, but again, to know that suffering is a part of our awakening, and evil acts in the world come from deep suffering inside. So to pray for revelation, to pray for awakening, to pray for true perception it might be a good thing to do. So I just thought I'd share. something that's really opening up for me in my universe here, you know. And I hope it finds something inside of you. The more we pray, the better. You know, the more we just spend time to radiate, you know, something that's gonna uplift the world, you know, or that can. It's good. And again, even if it doesn't do anything, even if it doesn't work, for us, it's really good. For us, it's really healthy. It uplifts us, you know, having that kind of perception and putting forth that kind of action outward in the world of praying for others and having compassion for others, even those who do evil in the world, really shifts our own environment. So even if it doesn't have any effect outward, then at least for us, it really, really uplifts our environment and brings us closer to God, to divinity, you know. And I know, like, some of the questions that can come up with this, where this doesn't have anything to do with, like, I just feel like I have to say this, of like allowing injustice to continue, you know, as part of light beings in the world, or those who strive for goodness and things like that. It's important for us to, if we witness things in the world that we can make changes towards, we should. You know, if there's evil actions happening in the world and we have the ability to make positive changes, we should. You know, this isn't about like ignoring, you know, or like washing over evil, you know, with hippie stuff. Excuse my language with that. But it's not about just saying, oh, they're evil, they're suffering inside, you know, they'll get better. If we have the ability, we should indeed stop evil from happening, if we have the ability to do so, and if it doesn't cause us to turn sour inside. You know, we need to maintain a state of love inside, and we can do that and fight at the same time. We can do that and overpower the forces of darkness, but that's only done with love. You know, moments of fleeting angers or passion to make changes sometimes can be necessary, but it's really important that stuff doesn't stick. You know, if we find we're like angry at the way the world is, or fearful, or you know, we want to go out and fight against evil, you know, and that's really stuck inside and it's looping inside, the story loops, you know, you tell the same stories over and over again to yourself and outwardly, you know, pay attention to what you express, you know, because again, if there's an inspiration to fight against evil is one thing, but like an obsession with it, or a fear-based direction is different. You know, I feel, you know, a call to fight this force, and for me, prayer is the way that I'm doing that. You know, and prayer in the mood of compassion is the way that I'm doing that. And again, if something comes up in my life where, you know, I have to get out there and do something and use some force, then I'm ready. But you know, that's only if it's absolutely necessary, and to like think about that all the time. You know, we just need to radiate love. That's what's going to change the world. We just need to radiate love at the strongest frequency that we can, and display that out in the world, display compassion out in the world as much as we can, you know, and that starts with towards ourselves. So it's really important to acknowledge all the layers of this, you know, because again, this doesn't mean, again, we have to be perfect in the world. We just have to work on ourselves. You know, none of this is about being perfect. Maybe that happens as a result of the work that we do, but it's not about like, okay, now I'm aware of what you know, good divine qualities. That doesn't mean you instantly start acting divine. You know what I mean? You're gonna burn through shit before that stuff happens, and those happenings and those expressions are spontaneous due to the work that you do inside, and the experiences that we have are to reveal us about the work that we need to do inside So when we act out in a way that's out of alignment with the light path, or whatever you want to call it, then that's a sign for us to do some work inside. It's not a sign for us to judge ourselves, or even if other people judge us, it's a sign for us to go inside and do the work, and that's important. And that's where the greatest gift to the world is going to come of, is when we really genuinely, honestly, and humbly do our own internal cleansing. We clean our own house. We're the only ones who can do that. And then if it feels called, if it feels aligned, then pray for the awakening of others. Pray for revelation of the truth in others, that love is a greater strength, it's a greater power, it's the source of creation. It has to be. And that when we align with that, when we align with real truth beyond convenience, because anger is convenient. It's a convenient place to go to, because the animal aspect of ourselves, the ego aspect of ourselves, makes so much noise. It's easy to fall into it. It's easy to indulge in that. It's easy to get pulled into that sphere of expression and thought and interaction and all that stuff. It's easy because it makes a lot of noise. It takes discipline to remain quiet inside amongst the noise. It takes great strength. Humility is strong. Something that's been it's a missed message in a way, that's been given and also received by, even entertainment and stuff like that, movies and TV shows and music and all this kind of stuff. There's been so much influence that, anger is strong, or force is strength. But, that's something that's so beautiful about Eastern philosophies like Taoism and Indian philosophy and Buddhism and that kind of stuff. It really displays the power of peacefulness, the power of serenity. Is a tremendous force, and that's proven in martial arts too. It's something that's proven there, that the more when we really relax and flow with even violence, then we're able to triumph, when we're calm inside. If we're trying to force and get things happen and if that's there, we're gonna make mistakes. But if we're quiet inside and clear inside and open, clarity is empty, right? Clarity is empty of stuff, so you can clearly see what's going on. You can clearly be with what's going on. You can feel what's going on in a true sense, because there's nothing that's influencing whatever you're involved with that's unrelated. We have so many unrelated things that influence our lives. Our traumatic experiences from our childhood influencing our present experiences. They don't need to be there. They show up only to show us that, we're holding on to something, or there's something being held on to. This stuff is important. This is important, because ultimately happiness is really something that, there's a bird just landed on my window. Happiness is something true happiness, genuine happiness, not happiness that comes from pleasing our senses or being comfortable in our environment. Happiness, internal happiness, that we're content with who we are. We're joyful to be who we are. We accept who we are. We love ourselves inside. We're healthy in the body. This kind of happiness that's internal. When that's in place, when we're satisfied inside, just being, without having to have anything specific outwardly. When we have that kind of internal environment, then what we do out in the world is directly related to that. So if we pray for evil, pray that they find peace inside themselves, that they accept themselves and feel whole inside themselves, that they don't rely on anything outward or external to offer them joy or satisfaction, that they find joy and satisfaction in just being alive, and then that's enough. Thank you so much for joining me on this moment to explore prayer and explore evil, and explore our own experiencing in life. Thank you. Many blessings from the light inside of me to the light inside of you and all things and all beings, to the source of creation, to the source of creation. Namaste.